Everett Harmon woke to his sons shivering beside him in the back seat of the Honda Civic. The November dawn crept through frost-covered windows, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and white. His boy, 7-year-old Todd, pressed closer for warmth, his small body trembling despite the 2 jackets and sleeping bag wrapped around him. "Dad," Todd's voice was barely a whisper. "Is it morning?" "Yeah, buddy." Everett pulled him closer, sharing what little body heat he had left. 5 more minutes, then we'll head to the community center. Hot shower today, remember? Todd nodded against his chest. For months of sleeping in parking lots, using gym memberships for showers, and pretending everything was fine when they weren't. For months since Brooke had thrown him out with nothing but a duffel bag and his son, claiming he was a failure who couldn't provide for his family. The irony burned like acid in his throat. He'd given her everything, every penny from his construction work, every hour of overtime, every dream he'd ever had. And she called him worthless. Everett had met Brooke Hopper 6 years ago at a community barbecue. She'd been stunning, with honey blonde hair and a smile that made him forget his own name. He'd been a simple construction foreman then, honest work with honest pay. Her father, Herman Hopper, owned half the commercial real estate on Main Street, and Brooke had grown up in a world Everett had only seen from scaffolding. "You're different from the country club boys," she told him on their 3rd date. "You're real. Real." The word haunted him now. He'd been real enough to marry, real enough to give her a son, but apparently not real enough to keep when things got tough. The construction industry had taken a hit 18 months ago. Projects dried up, and Everett had been laid off along with half his crew. He'd scrambled for work, taking whatever odd jobs he could find, but Brooke's patience had evaporated faster than morning dew. "You're embarrassing me," she'd hissed at him during a family dinner at the Hopper estate. "My father built an empire, and you can't even hold down a job." Her brother, Don Hopper, had smirked from across the table. "Maybe construction just isn't your calling, Everett. Some men are builders. Others are just workers." The divorce papers had arrived 3 weeks later. Brooke got the house, the savings, everything. Everett got Todd every other weekend and a court order for child support he couldn't afford to pay. Then Brooke had pulled her final move, using her father's lawyers to push for full custody, claiming Everett was unstable and couldn't provide a safe environment. "Over my dead body," Everett had told his lawyer, an overworked public defender named Willie Moss. "She's not taking my son." Willie had looked at him with tired eyes. "Then you need to show the court you can provide stability. A job, a home, something." So Everett had fought. He'd taken a job at a warehouse loading trucks for minimum wage, working night shifts so he could be with Todd during the day. He'd moved them into a cheap motel, but 2 weeks later, the owners had kicked them out for being 1 day late on rent. The car had become their home, and Everett had become an expert at finding safe parking lots, free Wi-Fi at libraries, and churches with community dinners. "Come on, champ." Everett gently shook Todd awake. "Let's get you ready for school." They had a routine now. Morning wash-up at the community center, Todd to school on the bus, Everett to work until 3, pick up Todd, homework at the library, dinner from wherever they could afford it, and then finding a safe place to sleep. Rinse and repeat. The court hearing for custody was in 2 weeks, and Everett knew he was running out of time. At the warehouse, Everett's supervisor, a gruff man named Jerry Underwood, had been surprisingly kind. "You're a good worker, Harmon," Jerry had said last week. "Don't know what brought you here, but you're overqualified for loading boxes. Just need steady work," Everett had replied, hefting another pallet onto the truck. "Well, you got it. And if you ever need anything, let me know." That afternoon, after picking up Todd from school, Everett parked outside the public library. Todd had a book report due, and the library had become their second home. The librarian, an elderly woman named Leona Strickland, had taken a shine to Todd, often slipping him extra snacks and letting them stay past closing time to finish homework. "Mr. Harmon," Leona called as they entered. "There was a man here earlier looking for you." Everett's stomach dropped. Had Brooke's lawyers found them? "What kind of man?" "Professional type. Suit and briefcase. Said he was an accountant. Left his card." She handed him a business card that read, "Patrick Bowers, CPA, Forensic Accounting and Asset Recovery." Did he say what he wanted? Just that it was urgent and related to your finances. Said he'd try to find you again. That night, Everett couldn't sleep. An accountant looking for him could only mean one thing. More debt collection, maybe something from the divorce he'd missed. He'd been so careful, but with Herman Hopper's resources, they could dig up anything. The next evening, as Everett parked the Civic behind a closed gas station for the night, a sharp tap on the window made him jump. A man in a gray suit stood outside, briefcase in hand, his breath fogging in the cold November air. Patrick Bowers looked nothing like a debt collector. He was younger than Everett expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and an expression that spoke of someone who'd seen too many balance sheets and not enough sunsets. "Mr. Harmon?" Patrick's voice was muffled through the glass. "I need to speak with you. It's about the property on Main Street." Everett rolled down the window an inch, Todd stirring in the back seat. "I don't own any property. You got the wrong guy. Are you Everett James Harmon, married to Brooke and Hopper on June 15th, 6 years ago? Was married. We're divorced. Then I have the right person." Patrick glanced at Todd, sleeping in the back. "This conversation requires privacy. There's a diner across the street. My treat. You need to hear this." 20 minutes later, Everett sat across from Patrick in a worn booth at the Riverside Diner, having left Todd sleeping safely in the car where he could watch from the window. Patrick had ordered coffee and spread documents across the table like a detective laying out evidence. "Mr. Harmon, do you remember signing incorporation papers for a business approximately 4 years ago?" "I signed a lot of papers when I was married. Brooke's father always had something for me to sign. He said it was tax stuff or family trust documents. I trusted him." Patrick's expression hardened. One of those documents was a deed of incorporation for a restaurant called the Heritage Grill on Main Street. "According to these records, you are the sole proprietor and owner." Everett stared at him. "That's impossible. I've never owned a restaurant. I don't even know how to run one." "Legally, you do. The business was established in your name, with your signature, witnessed, and notarized." Patrick pulled out another document. "The restaurant has been operating for 3.5 years. Current monthly revenue averages $47,000. The words hit Everett like a physical blow. "What? $47,000 a month, Mr. Harmon. Gross revenue, of course. After operating costs, the net profit is roughly $22,000 monthly." Patrick leaned forward. "Every single deposit has been going to an account registered to Herman Hopper." The diner seemed to tilt. Everett gripped the edge of the table, his mind racing. "How is that possible? How did I not know? That's what I'm trying to determine. I was hired by the IRS to investigate discrepancies in the Hopper family's tax returns. What I found was a sophisticated shell game. Your restaurant shows minimal profit on paper due to inflated operating costs, but the actual revenue stream has been diverted to Herman Hopper's personal accounts. He's been laundering the money through various business expenses, avoiding millions in taxes. Why me? Why put it in my name?" Patrick's smile was grim. "Liability. If the IRS ever came knocking, you'd be the one holding the bag. A desperate, unemployed construction worker with a failing business. Meanwhile, Herman Hopper remains clean, just a father-in-law who tried to help out." Everett felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. "They set me up. They used me, and then discarded you when they were done. The divorce timing is interesting. Filed right after the restaurant became profitable. My guess? They wanted you out of the picture before you stumbled onto the truth. Can you prove all this?" "I have 3 years of bank records, forged expense reports, and testimony from employees who were paid under the table. Herman Hopper is looking at serious federal charges. But here's the thing, Mr. Harmon." Patrick slid the incorporation deed across the table. "This restaurant is legally yours. Every penny of that revenue belongs to you." Everett picked up the document, his hands shaking. His name, his signature, dated 4 years ago. He remembered that day vaguely. Herman had called it an investment opportunity, a way to diversify the family portfolio. Brooke had been excited, saying her father was finally accepting Everett into the inner circle. It had all been a lie. "What happens now?" Everett asked. "The IRS is building a case against Herman Hopper. They'll want your cooperation. In exchange, you'll get your business back, full ownership transfer to your control. You'll also have ground for a civil suit against the entire Hopper family for theft, fraud, and conspiracy. How long until this goes public? The IRS moves slowly. Could be months before charges are filed. But your ownership is immediate. That restaurant is yours right now. You could walk in tomorrow and take control. Everett looked out the diner window at his Civic, at his son sleeping in the back seat. For months of hell. For months of his son shivering in the cold, of scraping together spare change for dollar menu dinners, of watching Todd try to be brave while his world fell apart. And all while the Hoppers had been stealing from him, living in luxury off his name, his signature, his legal liability. Mr. Bowers, Everett said slowly, how much cooperation does the IRS need? Patrick raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that if this restaurant is legally mine, then I have certain rights. Management decisions, operational control, and I'm thinking that the Hopper family doesn't know you've found me yet. A smile crossed Patrick's face. No, they don't. Herman thinks you're just another deadbeat living in a car. He has no idea I've been tracking his accounts. Then let's keep it that way. Everett's mind was already working, pieces falling into place. How long can you give me before the IRS moves in? I can probably stall for 2, maybe 3 weeks. But Mr. Harmon, you need to understand. I understand perfectly. Everett stood, gathering the documents. They tried to destroy me. They took everything and then threw me away like garbage. Now I'm going to show them what a real builder can do. What's your plan? Everett looked out at his sleeping son, at the car that had been their home, at the life the Hoppers had reduced him to. I'm going to take back what's mine, and I'm going to make sure they never forget it. The next morning, Everett stood across the street from the Heritage Grill, watching the morning rush of customers filing in. The restaurant occupied a prime corner location on Main Street, housed in a beautifully restored historic building with floor-to-ceiling windows and an elegant facade. He'd driven past it 100 times over the past 4 years and never once suspected it was his. Todd tugged at his hand. Dad, why are we looking at that restaurant? Because, buddy, that's ours. Ours? Yeah. I'll explain later. Right now, I need you to do something important for me. Can you be brave? Todd nodded seriously. At 7 years old, he'd already learned more about being brave than most adults ever would. Everett pulled out the business card Patrick had given him. I need to make some calls. Let's go to the library. At the library, while Todd worked on his homework with Leona, Everett used the computer lab to do research. The Heritage Grill had a website, professionally designed with photos of elegant dishes and a warm, upscale atmosphere. The menu featured farm-to-table cuisine with prices that made Everett wince. No wonder it was pulling in $47,000 a month. The staff page showed a general manager named Julia Marshall, a chef named Ricardo Jenkins, and a dozen other employees. But what caught Everett's attention was the About page. It told a heartwarming story about how the restaurant was founded by a local family dedicated to preserving culinary traditions and was managed by the Hopper family's commitment to community excellence. Not one mention of Everett. They'd erased him completely. He pulled out his phone and called Patrick. I need information on the restaurant's staff. Who knows what? Julia Marshall, the general manager, has been there since day one. She reports directly to Herman Hopper and handles all the accounting. She knows everything. What about the other staff? Most are legitimate employees who think they're working for a Hopper family business. They're paid properly, taxes withheld, everything above board on their end. The scheme only works if the rank and file are clean. So Julia Marshall is the key. She's the gatekeeper, and she's loyal to Herman. Getting her to cooperate won't be easy. Everett thought for a moment. What if I don't need her to cooperate? What if I just need her out of the way? What are you planning? I'm a legal owner, right? That means I can make management decisions. Technically, yes. But Herman has been operating as the de facto owner. If you start making changes, he'll know something's up. Let him know. I want him worried. I want him wondering what's happening. Everett's voice hardened. He spent 4 years stealing from me while I slept in my car. Now it's his turn to lose sleep. That afternoon, Everett walked into the Heritage Grill dressed in the one suit he still owned, slightly wrinkled from being stuffed in his duffel bag. He dropped Todd at school and taken a morning off work, calling in sick for the first time in 4 months. Jerry had been understanding. The lunch rush was winding down, and the restaurant hummed with quiet efficiency. Everett approached the hostess stand where a young woman named Kelsey French smiled professionally. "Welcome to the Heritage Grill. Do you have a reservation? I need to speak with Julia Marshall." "Is this regarding employment?" "No, it's regarding ownership." Kelsey's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." Everett pulled out the incorporation deed. "I'm Everett Harmon, the legal owner of this establishment. Get Julia. Now." 5 minutes later, a tall woman in her 40s emerged from the back office. Julia Marshall had the bearing of someone used to control, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression coldly professional. "I'm Julia Marshall. There seems to be some confusion." "No confusion. I'm Everett Harmon. This restaurant is registered in my name, and I'm here to assume operational control." He held out the deed. "Everything here belongs to me." Julia barely glanced at the document. "Mr. Harmon, I'm aware of the legal registration. However, this restaurant is operated under the management of Herman Hopper, who has full authority. Had full authority. That ends today. I'm giving you notice of immediate termination. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises." The color drained from Julia's face. "You can't do that. Herman doesn't own this restaurant. I do. And as of right now, you no longer work here." Everett turned to Kelsey, who was watching with wide eyes. "Call a staff meeting. Everyone currently on shift in the dining room, 5 minutes." Julia stepped forward, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? Herman Hopper will destroy you." He already tried. I'm still here." Everett met her gaze without flinching. 1 hour, Ms. Marshall. Then I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing." The staff meeting was awkward and tense. 15 employees gathered in the dining room, confusion written across their faces. Ricardo Jenkins, the head chef, crossed his arms skeptically. "What's going on? Where's Herman?" Everett stood before them, feeling the weight of their stares. These people had jobs, families, bills to pay. They deserve the truth. "My name is Everett Harmon, and I'm the legal owner of the Heritage Grill. This restaurant was incorporated in my name 4 years ago, but I was kept in the dark about its operation. The Hopper family has been using my business for their own purposes, and that ends today." A server named Sherry Sloan raised her hand tentatively. "Are we being fired?" "No. If you want to keep working here, your jobs are safe. I'm not interested in punishing you for what the Hoppers did. But things are going to change, and I need to know who's willing to stay and help me make this right." Ricardo stepped forward. "Look, man, I don't know what's going on between you and Herman, but we've got a dinner service in 3 hours. You want to play owner? Fine, but don't screw with my kitchen." "I won't. You keep doing what you do best. I'll handle the rest." "What about Julia?" Sherry asked. "She manages everything. Julia is no longer employed here. I'll be taking over management until I can hire a proper replacement." The staff exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, an older waiter named Stephen Mathis spoke up. "Mr. Harmon, most of us have been here since the beginning. We know Herman runs this place. If you're really the owner, prove it." Everett appreciated the directness. "Fair enough." He pulled out his phone and called Patrick. "Can you send the incorporation documents to the restaurant's email? The staff needs verification." 5 minutes later, Kelsey confirmed the email arrival. Stephen reviewed the documents on the computer behind the hostess stand, his expression gradually shifting from skepticism to shock. "These are legal," Stephen said quietly. "He's really the owner." The atmosphere in the room changed. Ricardo uncrossed his arms. Sherry looked at Everett with new curiosity. Even Julia, who'd been watching from the office doorway, seemed to deflate. "So what now?" Ricardo asked. "Now we run this restaurant properly. I'll need to learn the operations, understand the finances, and figure out exactly what the Hoppers have been doing. In the meantime, business continues as usual. Can you all handle that?" Heads nodded around the room. These were good people, hardworking people. They just wanted stability. "One more thing," Everett added. "Everything we discuss stays in this room. The Hoppers don't know I'm here yet, and I'd like to keep it that way for a little while. Can I trust you all to keep this quiet?" More nods. though Everett knew it was only a matter of time before word leaked. That was fine. He wanted Herman to know. He wanted him to feel the ground shifting beneath his feet. After the meeting, Julia approached him privately. Her earlier hostility had been replaced by calculation. "Mr. Harmon, perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. I've managed this restaurant for nearly 4 years. I know every detail of the operation. You need me. I need honest people. Are you honest, Ms. Marshall?" She hesitated just long enough to give herself away. "I follow orders. Herman Hopper's orders. And where did those orders tell you to send the revenue?" "That's confidential financial information. Not when it's my business. Last chance, Ms. Marshall. You can cooperate with me now, or you can explain to the IRS later why you helped funnel money illegally." Julia's face went pale. "How much do you know?" "Everything. Bank accounts, forged expenses, tax evasion. You're in this deep, Ms. Marshall. But if you help me, I might be willing to testify that you were coerced." She sat down heavily in a chair. "Herman said you'd never find out. He said you were just a construction worker, too stupid to ask questions." The word stung, but Everett kept his expression neutral. "He underestimated me. People do that a lot. Now, are you going to help me, or do I let the federal prosecutors have you?" Julia looked up at him, defeat in her eyes. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Over the next 3 days, Everett learned more about the restaurant industry than he'd ever imagined. Julia, now cooperative out of self-preservation, walked him through every aspect of the operation. The accounts payable, the supplier contracts, the staffing schedules, the inventory management. But more importantly, she showed him the second set of books. Herman Hopper's scheme was elegant in its simplicity. The restaurant generated legitimate revenue, but the expenses were inflated through fake supplier invoices. Organic produce from a non-existent farm. Premium ingredients from Shell Company. Consulting fees to businesses that didn't exist. All of it funneled money back to Herman's accounts while making the restaurant appear barely profitable on paper. "How much total?" Everett asked, sitting in the restaurant's office after closing time. Julia pulled up a spreadsheet she'd been maintaining. Over 3.5 years, just over $1.3 million. The number hit Everett like a punch. While he'd been sleeping in his car, unable to buy his son a warm meal, the Hoppers had stolen over $1 million from him. Does Brooke know? She knows. She's the one who suggested putting it in your name. Said you'd never figure it out, that you were too trusting. Julia's voice was flat, empty of emotion. Don Hopper handles the fake invoices. Brooke manages the shell companies. It's a family operation. Everett leaned back in a chair, processing. His ex-wife, the woman who'd called him worthless, had orchestrated his destruction. The woman he'd loved, who'd given him his son, had looked at him and seen only a useful idiot. "Why are you telling me this?" Everett asked Julia. "Because Herman promised me a partnership stake. 5 years of loyal service, and I'd get 10% ownership. It's been nearly 4 years, and suddenly he's talking about selling the restaurant and moving to Florida. I'm getting nothing." She met his gaze. "Herman Hopper uses people. I'm done being used. What do you want?" "Immunity from prosecution. A good reference. And maybe, if you keep the restaurant, a chance to stay on with actual legal operations." Everett considered. Julia was complicit, but she was also a valuable asset. "I'll talk to Patrick about the immunity. The reference depends on how helpful you are. And if I keep the restaurant, we'll see." That night, Everett sat in his car with Todd, parked behind the restaurant in the lot he now legally owned. Todd was asleep, but Everett couldn't stop his mind from racing. He had the proof, the documents, the testimony. He could go to the authorities right now and watch the Hopper family burn. But that felt too simple, too clean. They'd systematically destroyed his life, separated him from his son, left them homeless and starving. A criminal investigation would hurt them, sure, but it wouldn't make them feel what he'd felt. Everett wanted more. He wanted them to experience the humiliation, the betrayal, the gut-wrenching moment when everything they thought was secure crumbled beneath them. He pulled out his phone and called Patrick. "How long until the IRS moves?" "I've been stalling, but they're getting impatient. Maybe another week before they demand we move forward." 1 week. That's enough. Everett's mind was already forming a plan. "I need you to do something for me. Can you contact Herman Hopper's lawyer?" Why would I do that? Because I want to schedule a meeting. Business negotiation. Tell them I'm willing to sell the restaurant to Herman for a reasonable price. There was a pause. Everett, what are you planning? I'm giving them exactly what they want. A chance to clean up their mess, buy the restaurant legitimately, and make me disappear. They'll jump at it. And then I'll show them what it feels like to have everything taken away. The meeting was set for Tuesday evening at the restaurant. After closing, Herman Hopper's lawyer, a sleek man named Alan Coyle, had sounded relieved on the phone. Mr. Hopper is very interested in acquiring the property, Alan had said. I'm sure we can reach an amicable agreement. Everett spent the intervening days preparing. He had Patrick secure additional documentation. He had Julia prepare a comprehensive financial report showing the true revenue. He reached out to Jerry at the warehouse and explained the situation, earning a hearty slap on the back and an offer of any help needed. But the most important preparation was emotional. Everett had spent 4 months being beaten down, humiliated, made to feel worthless. Now he needed to remember who he was. Not a victim, not a failure, a fighter. On Tuesday morning, Everett picked up a suit from the dry cleaners, paid for with his first advance from the restaurant's legal accounts. He got a haircut. He stood straighter. When he looked in the mirror, he saw someone different from the desperate man who'd been sleeping in a car. He saw someone who was about to take his life back. That afternoon, he made one final call. To someone special. Someone who would make the evening's revelation even more perfect. At 7 p.m., Everett stood in the Heritage Grill's main dining room, the lights dim, the space elegant and quiet. Patrick stood beside him, briefcase full of documents. Julia waited in the back office, ready to testify if needed. The door opened, and the Hopper family entered like they owned the place. Because until recently, for all practical purposes, they had. Herman Hopper led the way, a large man in his 60s with silver hair and the confident swagger of someone who'd never been told no. Behind him came Don Hopper, younger but with the same entitled air. And then Brooke, still beautiful, still cold, her eyes widening in shock when she saw Everett standing there in a suit, looking nothing like the broken man she'd divorced. What the hell is this? Herman's voice boomed across the restaurant. Where's Julia? Julia works for me now, Everett said calmly. This is my restaurant, after all. Don laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Your restaurant? You're living in a car, Everett. You don't own anything. Actually, I do. Have a seat. Let's discuss the terms of your surrender. Brooke stepped forward, her face twisted with contempt. Surrender? You delusional loser. My father is offering to buy this property out of pity. You should be grateful we're even giving you a chance to walk away with something. Everett felt the old anger rising, but kept it controlled. Walk away with something? Like you walked away with our house? Our savings? My son's security? I walked away from a man who couldn't provide for his family. Brooke shot back. A man who was so pathetic he didn't even notice his own business existed. That's enough. Alan Coyle, the lawyer, stepped between them. Mr. Harmon, we're here in good faith to negotiate. Herman is prepared to offer you $200,000 for the full transfer of the restaurant and all associated assets. $200,000 for a business generating over $500,000 annually. It would have been insulting if it wasn't so predictable. Let me make sure I understand, Everett said slowly. You want to pay me $200,000 for a restaurant that's generated over $1.3 million in profit over the past 3.5 years. Herman's expression flickered. Just for a moment, uncertainty crossed his face. You've been stealing from me, Everett continued. Forging invoices, creating shell companies, funneling my revenue into your personal accounts while I slept in my car with my son. And now you want to buy your way out of criminal prosecution. The room went silent. Don's smirk faded. Brooke went pale. Herman's face reddened with anger. You can't prove any of that, Herman said, but his voice lacked conviction. Patrick stepped forward, opening his briefcase. Actually, we can. Bank records, forged invoices, testimony from your own general manager, and a very interested IRS investigation. The federal government is very interested in the Hopper family's creative accounting. This is extortion, Alan said quickly. We'll fight this in court. Please do. Everett pulled out his phone. Because I've already contacted the IRS, the state attorney general, and the local press. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know what the Hopper family really is. Not pillars of the community. Thieves. You son of a... Don lunged forward, but Herman grabbed his arm. How much do you want? Herman asked, his composure cracking. Name your price. We can make this go away. I don't want your money, Everett said. I want my life back. My son's life back. And I want you to feel what I felt. What does that mean? Brooks' voice was shrill now, the confident mask slipping. The restaurant door opened again, and Everett smiled as a woman entered. She was in her 50s, elegantly dressed, with sharp eyes and an official bearing. Behind her were two younger people carrying cameras and equipment. Herman Hopper, the woman asked. I'm Marcia Travis from the State Tax Commission. These reporters are from Channel 7 News. We understand you've been operating a sophisticated tax evasion scheme. Herman's face went from red to white in an instant. I want my lawyer. He's right here, Marcia said, gesturing to Alan. And he's about to be very busy. The reporters started filming, their cameras capturing the moment the Hopper family realized their world was ending. Don tried to push past them toward the door, but Patrick blocked his way. I wouldn't run, Patrick said mildly. Makes you look guilty. Brooke turned on Everett, her face contorted with rage. You did this. You destroyed us. No, Everett said quietly. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. We gave you everything. A home, a family, a chance to be part of something bigger than your pathetic little life. You gave me lies. You used me, stole from me, and threw me away. And when you did, you forgot something important. Everett stepped closer to her. You forgot that I'm a builder. And builders don't quit just because someone knocks them down. The next hour was chaos. More officials arrived. The reporters asked questions. Herman and Don were read their rights, while Alan frantically made phone calls. Through it all, Everett stood silent, watching the family that had destroyed him now tearing itself apart. Brooke tried to claim ignorance, throwing her father and brother under the bus. Don blamed Herman. Herman claimed it was all Julia's doing. The beautiful facade crumbled, revealing the rot underneath. Finally, Marcia approached Everett. Mr. Harmon, you'll need to give a formal statement. But I want you to know, your cooperation has been invaluable. The evidence you provided will ensure the Hoppers face serious consequences. What about my son? Everett asked. We have a custody hearing next week. Given Mrs. Harmon's involvement in criminal fraud, I suspect the family court will view your situation very differently now. You might want to contact your lawyer. After they'd all left, after the reporters packed up and the officials hauled the Hopper family away for questioning, Everett stood alone in his restaurant. Patrick had gone, promising to handle the legal details. Julia had disappeared, probably to find her own lawyer. The silence was profound. For months, Everett had dreamed of this moment. Justice, victory, revenge. But standing in the empty restaurant, he felt something unexpected, sadness. Not for the Hoppers. They deserved everything coming to them. But for the man he'd been, the one who trusted them, who believed in family and love and partnership. That man was gone. In his place was someone harder, wiser, and infinitely more careful. His phone rang. It was Leona from the library. Mr. Harmon, Todd is ready for pickup. Is everything all right? Yeah, Everett said, looking around at his restaurant. Everything's going to be fine now. The next morning, Everett woke in a hotel room. A real bed, clean sheets, heating that actually worked. Todd was sprawled beside him, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. They'd checked in last night using money from the restaurant's legitimate operating account, and Everett had watched his son's face light up at the sight of a real bathroom. Dad, Todd's voice was sleepy. Is this real? Are we really okay now? Yeah, buddy, we're really okay. The news had broken overnight. Channel 7 had run the story. Local business family charged with tax fraud. The morning paper had it on the front page. Hopper real estate empire built on stolen profits. Everett's phone had been buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and people he hadn't spoken to in years. He ignored most of them. There was only one call he needed to make. Willie Moss answered on the second ring. Everett? Man, I saw the news. This is incredible. Willie, I need you to file an emergency motion for the custody hearing. Given Brooks' criminal charges, I want full custody of Todd effective immediately. Already on it. Judge Harrison called me this morning. The hearing's been moved up to tomorrow, and he indicated he's very sympathetic to your situation. Everett, I think you're going to get everything you want. Everything you wanted. Full custody. His restaurant. His life back. It should have felt better than it did. That afternoon, Everett took Todd to the restaurant. In daylight, with his son by his side, it felt different. Real. The staff was already there, preparing for lunch service. Ricardo greeted them at the door. "Boss," Ricardo said with a respectful nod. "Heard the news. Hell of a thing." "Yeah. Listen, Ricardo, I need to know if you're staying. Things are going to be different now." Ricardo smiled. "Different how? You going to meddle with my kitchen?" "Not if you keep making food this good. Then I'm staying. This is the best gig I've had in 20 years. I don't care whose name is on the deed, as long as the kitchen runs right." Over the next few hours, Everett met with each staff member individually. Most wanted to stay. A few, concerned about the publicity and uncertain about the future, decided to move on. Everett gave them good references and severance pay from his own pocket. No hard feelings. Julia was the most surprising. She arrived at noon, looking tired but determined. "I spoke with my lawyer," she said without preamble. "He says if I testify against the Hoppers, I'll likely get probation and community service. No jail time. That's good. He also says I should look for other employment. Fresh start, clean slate." Everett studied her. Julia had been complicit, but she'd also been used. Just like him, in a different way. "What do you want, Julia?" "Honestly, I want to keep working here. I'm good at my job, and I've learned my lesson about following orders without asking questions." She met his gaze. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. Why should I trust you? Because I have nothing left to lose by being honest. And because I see what you're trying to do here. You could have just destroyed the Hoppers and walked away. But you're rebuilding. That takes guts." Everett considered. Trust was dangerous, but so was judgment without redemption. Probationary period. 3 months. You help me restructure this place legitimately, train your replacement, and prove you're serious about making this right. After that, we'll see. Relief flooded Julia's face. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to work you harder than Herman ever did." That evening, Everett sat with Todd in the restaurant's back office. Paperwork spread across the desk. His son was drawing pictures while Everett reviewed employee files and supplier contracts. It felt surreal, almost dreamlike. A week ago, he'd been loading trucks at a warehouse. Now he was running a successful restaurant. "Dad," Todd looked up from his drawing. "Can we stay here? I mean, not sleep here, but, not in the car anymore." "Yeah, buddy. We're getting an apartment next week. A real place with your own room." Todd grinned, then went back to his drawing. Everett watched him, feeling a fierce protectiveness. This was what mattered. Not revenge. Not the Hopper's downfall. This moment, his son smiling, safe, secure. His phone buzzed. A text from Patrick. "Court hearing tomorrow 9 a.m. Hopper's trying to negotiate. Herman offering full custody if you drop civil suit. Worth considering?" Everett stared at the message. Drop the civil suit, and the Hoppers would face only criminal charges. They'd lose their freedom, their reputation, but they'd keep whatever assets hadn't been seized. It was a tempting offer, but Everett had learned something over the past 4 months. Sometimes justice wasn't about what you could get. It was about what was right. He texted back, "No deal. We're seeing this through." The custody hearing the next morning was brief and decisive. Brooke didn't even show up, her lawyer claiming she was too distraught. Herman and Don were out on bail, but conspicuously absent. Only Alan Coyle appeared, looking defeated. Judge Harrison reviewed the evidence with barely concealed disgust. "Mr. Harmon, given the circumstances and Mrs. Harmon's criminal charges, I'm granting you full legal and physical custody of Todd Harmon, effective immediately. Mrs. Harmon will have supervised visitation, rights contingent on her legal situation." It was over in 15 minutes. 7 years of marriage, 4 months of hell, and it ended with a gavel strike and a piece of paper. Todd hugged him in the courthouse hallway. "We did it, Dad. We really did it." "Yeah, we did." Everett held his son close, feeling something break open in his chest. Relief, joy, freedom. Willie clapped him on the shoulder. Congratulations, Everett. You got your boy back. What happens now? With the Hoppers. Criminal trial will take months. The civil suit moves faster. You're looking at potentially millions in damages, given the theft and emotional distress. They're finished, Everett. Completely and totally finished. Driving back to the hotel with Todd, Everett passed the Hopper estate. It was a massive colonial mansion on 5 acres, the kind of place he'd once been intimidated by. Now, looking at it, he felt nothing. Just a house. Just walls and windows and a facade of importance. Real wealth wasn't in mansions or bank accounts. It was sitting beside him, humming along to the radio, finally feeling safe. 3 weeks later, the Heritage Grill reopened under new management. Everett had spent the intervening time working 18-hour days, learning the business from the ground up. He'd renegotiated supplier contracts, legitimate ones with real farms and distributors. He'd hired a new assistant manager to help Julia, a sharp woman named Amy Chambers who'd worked in hospitality for 20 years. He'd revamped the menu with Ricardo, focusing on quality over pretension. And he'd moved into a 2-bedroom apartment near Todd's school, a modest place but clean and warm in theirs. The reopening was invitation only, a soft launch before the public grand opening next week. Everett had invited the staff, their families, and a few select others. Jerry from the warehouse came with his wife. Leona from the library arrived with flowers. Willie Moss brought a bottle of wine. But the guest who mattered most was Stephen Mathis's daughter, Renee Klein. She was a family court social worker who'd been assigned to Todd's case during the custody battle. She'd seen them at their lowest, had evaluated Everett as a parent while he was living in his car, and had written a report that basically said, "This man is doing everything humanly possible for his son under impossible circumstances." "Mr. Harmon," Renee said warmly, shaking his hand, "I'm so proud of you. What you've accomplished is remarkable. I had help." Everett gestured around the restaurant. "None of this happens without people believing in me. People can only believe in you if you give them something to believe in. You did that. The evening was perfect. The food was excellent, the atmosphere warm, and for the first time in forever, Everett felt like himself. Not a victim, not a revenge seeker, just a man rebuilding his life with the people who mattered." Ricardo made a toast. "To the boss who actually knows how to let a chef work. And to the craziest comeback story I've ever seen." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Todd, sitting beside Everett with a Shirley Temple, grinned up at him. "You did it, Dad. We did it, buddy. All of us." The public opening the following week was a massive success. The story of the restaurant's redemption had spread through the community, and people were curious. The dining room was packed every night, reservations booked solid for weeks. Food critics came and praised Ricardo's menu. Business magazines requested interviews about Everett's remarkable turnaround. He declined most of them. He wasn't interested in being a story. He just wanted to run his restaurant and raise his son. But there was one interview he couldn't avoid. Channel 7 News wanted a follow-up piece, and Marcia Travis from the State Tax Commission requested he participate. It would help their case against the Hoppers, show the human cost of white-collar crime. So Everett found himself sitting in the restaurant after hours, camera lights in his face. A young reporter named Megan Mills asking questions. "Mr. Harmon, when you found out about the Hopper scheme, what was your first thought?" "Honestly, anger. Pure, white-hot rage. They took everything from me and made me feel worthless. And now," Everett considered, "now I feel grateful. Because if they hadn't pushed me to the bottom, I wouldn't have discovered what I'm capable of. They tried to destroy me, but they just made me stronger. What do you want people to know about your story? That rock bottom isn't the end. It's just a place to build from. And that the people who try to keep you down are usually the ones most afraid of what you'll become if you stand up." The interview aired 2 days later. Everett watched it with Todd curled up beside him on the couch of their apartment. When it ended, Todd looked up at him. "Did you really feel worthless, Dad?" Everett pulled him close. "For a while, yeah. But you know what taught me better? You. Every morning, watching you be brave, even when you were scared. You show me what strength really looks like. I wasn't that brave. You were the bravest. And I promise, buddy, nothing like that will ever happen to us again." The following month, the Hopper family's criminal trial began. Herman, Don, and Brooke all faced multiple charges: tax evasion, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Alan Coyle had negotiated plea deals for Herman and Don, reduced sentences in exchange for cooperation and asset forfeiture. But Brooke refused to plead, insisting she'd been manipulated by her father. The trial was ugly. Evidence was presented: bank records, forged documents, testimony from Julia and other employees. But the moment that sealed Brooke's fate was when Patrick Bowers took the stand and calmly explained how Brooke had personally created the shell companies used to launder the money. She was the architect, Patrick testified. Herman provided the money, Don created the invoices, but Brooke designed the entire system. Everett attended every day of the trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom. He wanted Brooke to see him there, to know he wasn't hiding, wasn't running. She'd called him worthless, and he wanted her to see exactly how wrong she'd been. The verdict came after 3 days of deliberation: guilty on all counts. Herman got 8 years in federal prison. Don got 5. And Brooke, because of her refusal to cooperate, got 7 years plus restitution of $1.5 million. As they were led away, Brooke looked back at Everett one last time. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow. All the beauty and confidence had been stripped away, leaving only a broken woman facing the consequences of her choices. Everett felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a quiet sense of closure. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Everett gave a brief statement: "Justice has been served. Now I just want to focus on my son and my business. The Hoppers are the past. We're looking toward the future." The civil suit settled a week later. The Hopper family's assets were liquidated to pay restitution. Everett received back payments for 4 years of stolen revenue, plus damages. The total came to just over $2 million. It was more money than he'd ever imagined having. Enough to secure Todd's future, expand the restaurant, maybe even open a second location. But more than the money, it was validation. Proof that he hadn't been worthless. Proof that he'd been right all along. With the legal battles finally over, Everett threw himself into the restaurant business. He hired more staff, including a young chef named Angel House who specialized in desserts. He expanded the menu, adding a weekend brunch that quickly became the most popular meal of the week. He even started a scholarship program for culinary students, giving back to the community that had supported him. Todd thrived. With stability and security, he blossomed into a confident, happy kid. His grades improved. He made friends. And every afternoon after school, he'd come to the restaurant and do his homework in the back office while Everett worked. "Dad," Todd said one evening, looking up from his math problems, "my teacher asked me to write an essay about someone I admire. Can I write about you?" Everett felt his throat tighten. "You don't have to. I want to. You're the strongest person I know." "I'm not that strong, buddy. I just kept going because I had to. That's what strength is, though, right? Keeping going even when it's hard." Everett pulled Todd into a hug, overwhelmed by pride and love and gratitude. "Yeah, that's exactly what it is." 6 months after taking control of the Heritage Grill, Everett stood in the dining room on a quiet Monday evening, reviewing the week's reservations with Amy. The restaurant was thriving beyond his wildest expectations. Revenue was up, staff retention was at 100%, and they'd just received a glowing review in a major food magazine. "We're going to need to hire another server," Amy said, scanning the schedule. "We're consistently turning away walk-ins on weekends." "Do it. And let's talk about expanding the kitchen. Ricardo's been complaining about space constraints." Amy smiled. "You've come a long way from the guy who didn't know what a mise en place was." "I had good teachers." Everett looked around the restaurant, still amazed that it was his. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself to believe this is real. It's real because you made it real. You could have taken the money and run, let the restaurant close. But you stayed and fought for it." That night, after closing, Everett sat in the empty dining room with a glass of wine Ricardo had recommended. He thought about the past year, the lows, the highs, the moments of despair and triumph. It felt like a lifetime ago that he'd been sleeping in his car, wondering if things would ever get better. His phone rang. It was Renee Klein, the social worker. "Everett, I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What's up?" "I wanted to let you know, I'm closing Todd's case file. He's doing wonderfully. You're providing an excellent home, and there's no reason for continued state oversight. That's great news. It is. But I also wanted to tell you something personally. In 20 years of social work, I've seen a lot of families in crisis. Most of them don't make it out intact. But you did. You and Todd not only survived, you thrived. That's rare, Everett. That's special. After they hung up, Everett sat in the silence, feeling the weight of everything he'd been through. The anger had faded. The need for revenge had been satisfied. What remained was something simpler and more profound: peace. He'd proven he wasn't worthless. He'd shown his son what real strength looked like. He'd built something meaningful from the ashes of his old life. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next morning, Everett woke early and made breakfast for Todd. Actual breakfast in their actual kitchen, with fresh ingredients from the restaurant suppliers. As they ate, Todd chatted about his upcoming school field trip, and Everett listened with the kind of present attention he'd never been able to give when he'd been working 3 jobs to survive. "Dad," Todd said between bites of eggs, "my friend Jake asked if I could sleep over this weekend. Can I?" "Sure, buddy. We'll talk to his parents and set it up." Todd grinned. "Cool. And Dad, thanks for everything. For fighting for me." Everett reached across the table and ruffled his son's hair. "Always, buddy. Always." Later that day, as Everett prepped for the lunch service with his staff, Ricardo pulled him aside. "Boss, I got offered a job in New York. Big-name restaurant, executive chef position, serious money." Everett's heart sank. Losing Ricardo would be devastating. "That's amazing, Ricardo. When do you leave?" Ricardo laughed. "I'm not leaving. I just wanted you to know I turned it down. This place, what we're building here, it matters more than money. You gave me a chance to be part of something real. I'm staying." "You're sure?" "Completely. Besides, I want to see how far we can take this. We got something special, Everett. Let's not waste it." That sentiment seemed to echo through everyone connected to the Heritage Grill. The staff wasn't just working for a paycheck. They were invested in the restaurant's success because they felt valued, respected, and part of something meaningful. It was the kind of workplace culture Everett had dreamed of but never experienced. By the restaurant's 1-year anniversary under Everett's ownership, the Heritage Grill had become one of the most successful restaurants in the city. They'd won awards, earned consistently positive reviews, and built a loyal customer base that returned week after week. Everett organized a staff party to celebrate, renting out a private room in a nearby venue. All the employees came with their families, and the atmosphere was joyful and relaxed. Everett stood to make a toast. "When I took over this restaurant, I didn't know anything about the industry. I was a construction guy who'd hit rock bottom. But you all took a chance on me. You taught me, supported me, and helped build something incredible. This success isn't mine, it's ours. Thank you for believing in me when I barely believed in myself." The room erupted in applause. Julia, now the assistant manager who'd proven herself trustworthy over the past year, wiped tears from her eyes. Ricardo raised his glass with a broad smile. Even Amy, usually reserved, was beaming. After the party, as Everett drove home with Todd, his son said, "You know what I think, Dad?" "What's that?" "I think the bad stuff that happened was worth it. Because now we're here, and everything's good." Everett considered this. Was it worth it? The pain, the struggle, the months of uncertainty? I wouldn't say it was worth it, buddy. But I'd say we made something good come from something bad. That's different. Ow! Well, I'd never choose to go through that again. But since we did go through it, I'm glad we came out stronger on the other side. Todd thought about this, then nodded. I get it. Like how that scar on my knee hurt when I fell, but now it reminds me I can heal. Exactly like that. The following week, Everett received an unexpected visitor at the restaurant. A woman in her 30s, professionally dressed, introduced herself as Monique Blackburn, a features writer for a national business magazine. "Mr. Harmon, I'd like to do a profile on you for our Entrepreneurs Who Overcame series. Your story is inspiring, the kind that gives people hope." Everett hesitated. He'd avoided most media attention, preferring to focus on the work rather than the publicity. But Monique was persuasive. Think about the single parents out there, the people facing betrayal or hardship, the ones who think they'll never recover. Your story shows them it's possible. Isn't that worth sharing? She had a point. If his experience could help even one person keep fighting, it would be worth the uncomfortable spotlight. The interview took place over several days, with Monique observing the restaurant's operations, talking to staff, and conducting in-depth conversations with Everett about his journey. She was thorough, asking difficult questions about the darkest moments. What kept you going? Monique asked. When you were at your lowest, what stopped you from giving up? Everett looked across the restaurant at Todd, who was doing homework at a corner table. I couldn't let my son grow up thinking you quit when things get hard. I had to show him that even when the world knocks you down, you get back up. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And the anger? How did you channel that productively instead of letting it consume you? I focused it, used it as fuel, but I also recognized that holding on to it would only poison me. The Hoppers took enough from me. I wasn't going to let them take my peace too. The article came out 3 months later. It was a powerful, nuanced piece that captured both the struggle and the triumph without sensationalizing either. The response was overwhelming. Everett received hundreds of emails from readers sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity, thanking him for his honesty. One email particularly stood out. It was from a man named Tim Swanson, who wrote, "I was living in my car with my 2 daughters when I read your article. Today, I got a job and secured an apartment. Your story gave me hope when I had none left. Thank you." Everett read that email 3 times, feeling the impact of his choice to share his story. This was legacy, not the restaurant, not the money, but the ripple effect of resilience inspiring others. As the second year of operating the Heritage Grill began, Everett found himself thinking less about the past and more about the future. He'd proven he could survive. He'd proven he could build. Now he wanted to see how far he could grow. He met with Ricardo and Amy to discuss expansion. What if we opened a second location? Maybe something different, a more casual concept, accessible to working families? Ricardo's eyes lit up. I've been thinking about this. What if we did a farm-to-table bistro? Fresh, simple food, moderate prices, community focus. And we could use it as a training ground, Amy added. Hire people who need second chances, teach them the industry, give them skills. It was perfect. They spent months planning, securing a location in a revitalizing neighborhood, designing a menu, and hiring staff. The new restaurant, which they named Second Chances Bistro, opened to immediate success. The concept resonated with the community, and the mission of providing opportunities for people rebuilding their lives attracted both customers and media attention. Everett hired a formerly incarcerated chef named Sergio Schmidt, who'd learned to cook in a prison culinary program. He hired a single mother named Marcia Travis who'd been unemployed for 2 years. He hired a recovering addict named Herbert Bates who just needed someone to believe in him. And he watched them all flourish. "You're doing more than running restaurants," Julia told him one evening as they reviewed the finances for both locations. "You're changing lives. I'm just paying it forward. People gave me chances when I needed them most." That's leadership, Everett. Real leadership isn't about power. It's about lifting others up. One night, about 2 years after taking control of the Heritage Grill, Everett received a letter. It was from Brooke, forwarded through her lawyer from the federal prison where she was serving her sentence. He almost didn't open it. What could she possibly say that would matter now? But curiosity won out. "Everett, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did to you, to Todd, to our family. Prison gives you a lot of time to think, and I've thought about nothing else. You were a good man who loved me, and I repaid that love with betrayal. I convinced myself you were the problem, that your struggles were weaknesses, that I deserved better. The truth is, I was the weak one. I let my father manipulate me, let greed corrupt me, let pride blind me. Todd is lucky to have you. He always was, but I was too stupid to see it. I hope someday he can forgive me. I hope someday you can too, not for my sake, but for yours. Holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it. Take care of our son, and take care of yourself. Brooke." Everett read the letter twice, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to crumple it up, to dismiss it as too little, too late. But another part recognized the courage it took to write it, the humility in admitting fault without making excuses. He filed the letter away. Maybe someday he'd share with Todd, when his son was old enough to understand the complexity of forgiveness. For now, it was enough to know that Brooke was facing her actions and finding whatever peace she could. That evening, Everett sat with Todd on their apartment balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Todd was 10 now, confident and thriving, with friends and hobbies and dreams of becoming a chef like Ricardo. "Dad," Todd said quietly, "do you ever think about Mom?" "Sometimes." "What?" "I got a letter from her. She wants to write to me, if I'm okay with it." Everett chose his words carefully. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. She hurt us really bad." "She did. But she's also your mother, and people can change. If you want to write back, that's okay. If you don't want to, that's okay too. This is your choice, buddy." Todd nodded slowly. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the day end and thinking about second chances, forgiveness, and the complicated nature of family. 3 months later, Todd decided to write back to Brooke. The letters were infrequent and supervised, but they represented a small step toward healing. Everett supported his son's choice while maintaining boundaries. Brooke would serve her time, and maybe someday she'd rebuild a relationship with Todd. But that was years away, and it would depend entirely on her proving she'd changed. For now, Everett focused on what he could control: his businesses, his son, and his community. The Heritage Grill and Second Chances Bistro continued to thrive. He hired more people who needed opportunities. He mentored young entrepreneurs who were starting their own businesses. He gave back to the community that had supported him during his darkest hours. And slowly, quietly, Everett Harmon became known not as the man who'd been betrayed, but as the man who'd built something meaningful from the ruins of that betrayal. On the 3rd anniversary of taking control of the Heritage Grill, Everett hosted a celebration. The restaurant was packed with staff, friends, community members, and people whose lives had been touched by his work. Jerry was there with his family, Leona from the library, Willie Moss, Renee Klein, Patrick Bowers, even some of the customers who'd become regulars. Ricardo made a toast. 3 years ago, a desperate man walked into this restaurant and claimed ownership. We didn't know if he could do it. Hell, he didn't know if he could do it. But he proved all of us wrong. He didn't just save this business. He transformed it into something that matters. To Everett, the best boss, the best friend, and living proof that your past doesn't define your future. The room erupted in applause. Everett stood, overwhelmed by the support, by the community he'd built, by the realization that he'd truly made it through to the other side. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for taking this journey with me. And thank you for showing me that rock bottom isn't where you end, it's where you begin." Later, as the party wound down, Todd found Everett in the kitchen, where he'd retreated for a moment of quiet reflection. "Dad, you okay?" "Yeah, buddy. Just taking it all in." Todd hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you, Dad. For everything." Everett held his son close, feeling the weight of those words, the validation he'd been seeking without realizing it. He'd proven he wasn't worthless. He'd built a life worth living. He'd shown his son what real strength looked like. And most importantly, he learned that the measure of a man isn't how hard he falls, but how purposefully he rises. As father and son stood together in the restaurant that had been both his lowest point and his greatest triumph, Everett felt something he hadn't felt in years: complete, unshakable peace. The Hoppers had tried to destroy him. Instead, they'd forged him into something stronger. And that was the best revenge of all. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.